IVM.
Have you ever wondered why women don't do more crime? Well, we're here to tell you. There's misconduct all the time. Women are thieves and murderers.
That's gross misconduct.
Con artists, money launderers.
Criminal misconduct.
Financial fraud that's hard to track.
Takes some planning, but still misconduct.
Even breaching a contract.
Well, that's more civil though.
It's misconduct. Misconduct. We tell you all about women that suck. Things that make you say, what the? It's misconduct.
Hello, and welcome to Misconduct. We're a podcast about Indian women who happen to also be criminals. My name is Raghavi.
And I am Nisha. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about India's oldest serial killer in the female category. I'm sure there have been older male serial killers.
Just another thing that men need to compete with us for. Just let us have this one thing, man. But yes, today we're talking about Troy Loco. That's how it's pronounced. It's spelled very differently. Don't go by what it's spelled. It's Troy Loco.
Yes, so Troy Loco was a Bengali sex worker who was convicted of swindling and eventually murdering a number of men all the way back in the late 1800s. We want to talk about this woman and, of course, maybe throw some light on how messed up the system was for a single or widowed women back then. And how in many ways they didn't really have a choice.
Sorry, do you mean killing people was the only option she had?
No, I mean sex work.
Oh, yes, fair. Okay. They didn't sound.
Yeah.
Just think about how you sound. It really sounded like the only choice she had was to kill people.
No. Unfortunately, that's not the case. But just a disclaimer, this is a true crime podcast. And obviously, we'll talk about crime stuff. Please expect topics like sex, murder, assault, and a lot of other gruesome stuff. This is not a Disney movie. We will not sugarcoat stuff. This podcast is not meant for children. So listener discretion is advised.
Okay. Should we roll into 1800s Calcutta?
Rolls Calcutta. Nice.
All right, then. So actually, that was really funny. I don't know why I dismissed it. It was quite cute. I'll give it to you.
Yay.
Fine. So yes, Calcutta. What was Calcutta like in the 1800s? We can say with a certain degree of certainty that Calcutta was like the OG, like cutthroat metro city, like way before Bombay became one of those kind of cities, right? So currently, of course, we all know that Kolkata is the current like capital city of the state of West Bengal. But in the 1800s, Calcutta was a very different animal. It was still sort of, there was so much colonial misery. I can't even really describe it in words. But it was flourishing as a metropolitan center as well of like art and commerce and literature and architecture. It was like, I mean, if you think of Bengal in the 1800s, you really would think of like just so many writers and, you know, like, and eventually like filmmakers, those sorts of things. So it was really a flourishing art and commerce center. It was also the capital of the British Empire. In India specifically. I mean, otherwise it's London, I suppose. Till the British moved to Delhi in 1911. So yeah, I've actually never been to Calcutta. Have you been there?
Oh, really? Yeah. I guess I was kind of born there. My parents were there for like 8 and 12 years.
Oh, yes.
So I was there for about 5 years first 5 years of my life. I could actually speak fluent Bengali back then.
Yeah?
My parents still can. They can switch into it like it's their mother tongue.
What do you like the most about Calcutta?
So I've actually been there like a couple of times after as an adult as well. And man, the food is to die for. I know everyone says this, but oh my goodness, it is such an experience. It's amazing. And next time, whenever this lockdown ends, we're going to go to Calcutta and we're going to eat like hell.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard a lot about it. I personally never been. I've just eaten like the more bastardized versions when like that happened in Bangalore. Bangalore is the worst for street food. Like it's just, they put peas in like pani puri. Okay. It's just stressful how it's fine. But I get what you mean. I really am very excited to go. But before all of that, Calcutta in the 1800s is again very different. It wasn't as cute as we're describing it right now. It was also very, very heavy on the caste system. So there are loads of like historical, like academic articles, especially that talk about how the British used Bengal's religious and caste system in their favor. And a lot of their policies and benefits catered to like, especially the Bengali Hindu population, definitely sidelined Muslims. And within Hindus themselves, there were major divides in terms of caste. Social mobility itself, like to be able to move, from a lower socioeconomic status to a higher one was nearly impossible unless you were already in one of the top Brahmin sects. So, and of course, as a Brahmin, it's very likely you were a landowner. And when I say landowner, I mean landowner, like acres and acres of ancestral property. And it usually meant you were very, very rich. And being rich meant that you have separate rules.
Of course.
Course.
I think that's valid even today.
Time immemorial. If anything, if you take away anything, it's that the rich are better than you. But yes, the Bengali Muslims.
Let's eat them.
That's true. Bengali Brahmins especially had access to some of the best education institutes. They had the option of traveling abroad, and like it was just like the world was their oyster. And a study that I had read on social mobility in India from a historical perspective, this was authored by Zach Landis, and it was published in the University of California. So it tracked how different castes and classes rose just by analyzing prominent surnames for different like elite occupation, educational statuses and stuff. And the ones that really had any sense of like influence in society, especially Bengal society, were Mukherjees, Banerjees, Chakrabartis, Chatterjees, and Gangulis. Like those were the names that got you to places. If you were anything else, or worse, if you were a woman with no family attached to you, especially, you were just screwed.
Yeah. As these names were not, and I found this out recently when I was working. The names that you mentioned, that's not what they originally were. It was Mukhopadhyay, Bandopadhyay, Chattopadhyay. But like the Brits couldn't pronounce it. And therefore it was like Mukherjee and Banerjee and like whatever bastardization that they do. And I hate when this happens because like it especially affects me when like a lot of places offer Mulligatawny soup.
Oh.
It's rasam. Get your act together. It is not Mulligatawny soup.
That is awful. I've been to like, I think this was Bangalore Club, and for lunch they had served Mulligatawny soup. And someone looked me like directly in the eyes, in my sad Tamil eyes. He looked at me and he said, "Would you like some Mulligatawny soup, madam?" And I'm like,
one slap.
It's
basically Mullaga is pepper, Tanni is water, and that's what's in rasam, man. Just call it rasam. It's easier than Mulligatawny soup.
That is true. Actually, with this, let's probably take a teeny tiny break. When we come back, we'll talk about what women were really treated like in Bengal in the 1800s, especially widows. And that really ties up with what you want to talk about, Troy Loco especially. So we'll see you in a bit.
Welcome back after the break. I may or may not have had some rasam. No, I'm kidding. Let's just quickly get into talk about women in Bengal in the 1800s and more specifically the widows. And I think one word comes to mind when we talk about them, and that is sati. So for those of you who don't know, sati is the practice in which a widow willingly self-immolates or commits suicide on her husband's funeral pyre, because Hindus primarily burn or cremate their dead. So it was considered like the kind of sacrifice that, among other things, proved your absolute devotion to your husband. But there were some exceptions as well. Pregnant and menstruating women apparently did not have to do this. Of course, in reality, society started forcing this upon all widowed women because, unmarried women anyway are considered a burden, which still holds good today. But now, as a widow, the implications were far worse. So in colonial India, not having a husband means not just not having a livelihood. It also means that you could be abused by your husband's family or just ostracized by society. It's kind of a sad time for them. Widowed women were almost like left with very few options after their husband's death. So, and one of those options was becoming a sex worker.
That's awful. Like to have just literally nothing else to, to look towards, either get beaten up and abused by your husband's family or just sex work.
by random strangers.
Yeah, your body is never really even your own, which is just
Yeah.
awful. Oh, by the way, Sati, it was when we say it was bad in Bengal, it was genuinely bad around that time. In 1829, there was a law that was passed specifically for Bengal called the Bengal Sati Regulation. It banned the practice of sati, of course, and it sort of allowed for prosecution of those that pushed women into sati. We have a very similar law today as well. It's effectively translated into the Sati Prevention Act of 1987. This is passed by the Indian Parliament. And I mean, it's a little slightly different sort of an act where it just seeks to stop the glorification of the practice. Because the fact is, it is still practiced in pockets of India. We don't hear about it as much. It does happen. A large part of this is, I'll be honest, a large part of this is not awareness. It's not like women deserve agency and they can have a life after marriage. It's just, it goes straight into the crime part of it, which is you can't ask her to kill herself on her
Right.
husband's bonfire. So you don't address the root cause of it. You're just like, that one act is what I'll criminalize. So yeah.
Well, before we get into who Troy Loco was, let's just get some basic stuff out there. There's actually just one primary source that talks about her wrongdoings, and that is Priyonath Mukhopadhyay. Priyonath was a former inspector and detective with the Lal Bazaar police station in the detective department of the Calcutta police. Priyonath was the investigating and arresting officer in this case. So his accounts are very personal. And we say personal because it's kind of colored with the sort of opinion that most like high caste men will likely have about a widowed woman / sex worker, right? His work regarding Troy Loco is captured in this Bengali, partially true, partially fictionalized publication. It's called Darogar Daptar. And apparently Daroga is the job title, like inspector or commissioner of police or something like that. The name of the book literally translates to The Inspector's Files. And volume 78 covers Troy Loco's story.
Right. And actually, I want to just add something here. We don't have any primary sources on this outside of
Yeah.
this guy. Why do you ask? Nobody asked, but I want to tell you. The reason there's only one singular source is because the Calcutta police burned all police records prior to the 1930s, except for those that relate to the independence movement. Now, why would they do this? You ask. Again, you did. But they did this because, I don't know. We have no reason, really. Nothing. There is no reason for them to do this. It's most likely because maybe they ran out of space, is the best reason that I have. But
Yeah.
honestly, nothing infuriates me as much as a dumb human decision taken to permanently remove any sort of historical archive of any nature. It just pisses me off.
Yeah, I think somebody was like, hey, burn this on a CD. And then they just heard, burn it. It was all burnt.
Burn it on a CD. But yes, I mean, that's fair. I mean, that didn't make sense, but I get it. But Troy Loco, also, there's another thing that really pissed me off, and I'm really upset about this, honestly. Troy Loco would have lived in a time when she would have been photographed because, it was the late 1800s, photography existed. But no one has been able to recover a photo of hers. It's very likely there would have been a photo on these files, but we just can't find them because, they burnt it.
Because we burnt it. Yeah, but luckily we do have one more source, even if it's kind of secondary. We reached out to Dr. Tathagata Neogi. He's an archaeologist based out of Calcutta and the co-founder of Immersive Trails. So Immersive Trails, among other things, conducts history-based walking tours around the city of Calcutta. And they even do a crime tour. So when we go, we should definitely do this. Dr. Neogi's research into Troy Loco is extremely intensive. He somehow excavated old police reports and data from private collections, and he put together a very clear story about who Troy Loco was and what she did. And you can find Dr. Neogi on his Twitter, which is @ArchaeoNomad. We'll make sure to add it in the description. So I just want to thank him in particular for this. Raghavi had the chance to speak with him earlier this year, and it was like an amazing experience.
Yes, it really, really was.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Doctor.
thank you. It really was an amazing experience. But now, on the 15-minute mark, we'll finally get into who Troy Loco was. Who was Troy Loco? She was a Brahmin girl, is as far as we know, who was born in the late 19th century in a village in Bengal that is unnamed. We generally don't know where it was. She was likely born as Troy Loco Sundari. But we understand there were court documents that called her Troiloko Roar. I'm not sure what that translates to, honestly. Or the more crude and upsetting Troiloko the prostitute outright. Just, yeah, it's like, it's just outright. But Troiloko was likely born a Bengali Kulin Brahmin. And we know today that popular Kulin Brahmin surnames are Banerjee, Mukherjee, Chatterjee, and Ganguly. So we can assume it was likely one of these. There are also loads of marriage practices between Kulin Brahmins at the time. This includes things like polygamy and sort of ensuring that they only marry within their sect. But the most popular one appears to be male Kulin Brahmins marrying much younger women within their sects. So Troiloko, of course, was married off as a child to a much older Brahmin gentleman. And it's said that she met him a grand total of once. And then she was sent to live with her mother. And because he was much older, or it could be another reason, but he was infinitely older than her, he passed away. So that happened. So now she's widowed, right? But she was quite lucky in that she didn't have to commit sati. Yay!
Yay! Congratulations.
Mm-hmm. Instead, we are told that a kind-hearted older woman approached her a little after she was widowed. And this woman offered her a home, basically like this life of like genteel sort of poverty, which is not bad for a widow with no livelihood. It still has a vague degree of independence, right? But it turns out that this older woman was in fact a supply chain manager of sorts for Calcutta's brothels in the Sonagachi district. Sonagachi district, even today, Sonagachi district is a very popular red light area in Calcutta. It has over 7,000 sex workers. And essentially what she did was she introduced Troiloko to a young man who promised to marry her. This man took her to Calcutta and promptly sold her to a brothel.
That is disgusting. Why are people like this? Like,
I don't know.
Why? What is it about? Like, they see a child and they're like, yes, let us sell this child to a brothel. What prompts this kind of thinking?
Power. It's power. It's power trip. That's really it. There isn't much else to it.
Yeah. Well, luckily for Troiloko, she was very beautiful, which is why we're more pissed off that we can't see a picture of her. Because, so, I mean, since she basically joined the trade as a child, she had youth on her side. Also, sex workers were just groomed to be very charming and seductive. So she became very popular in the area and she was like very well known for her beauty. Some accounts say that she was earning enough to buy herself a house, a horse-drawn carriage in the city. And she also had servants at her beck and call, which sounds kind of fun, I guess.
Get it. Get it, girl. I mean, it's fair. It's fine.
Yeah, unfortunately, that did not last very long because much like her beauty, her popularity also waned. And by like the 1880s, she was considered too old to be a successful sex worker. So around this time, she also took a semi-permanent lover called Kali Babu. He was a widower whose company she seemed to enjoy. So she was like, yeah, I'm a chill with this dude. But unfortunately, because there was another man there, it kind of impacted her earnings. For one, he was always there. So how to get clients? And the second thing was she adopted his son, Hari. And with clients going away, she was kind of struggling to pay for Hari's clothes and tuition and things like that. So thus began Troiloko's foray into some small-time crimes.
Segue. Very cool. But yes, she sort of started off with like these very small time sort of crimes. Some you would just call them petty crimes essentially. At least in comparison to what she goes on to do. So she pulled cons primarily. There was no murdering in the beginning. So con number one was robbing her clients. So a lot of Troiloko's clients were really young men from rich upper caste families, ripe for the manipulation. So she would promise them the chance to participate in like an orgy or, I don't know, like perform a very specific sexual act, I suppose. And honestly, it's not that hard to entice a guy into coming over. She would basically just leave him like the 1800s equivalent of a text message saying, hey, you up? And then they would just turn up, So except it would go with like a passenger. No, what are they called? Messenger pigeons. I don't know. I don't know what the 1800s was like.
Worst.
Was the telephone invented by then? I'm sure it was.
Oh my God, does it matter?
I don't know. But I'm just imagining like a messenger pigeon turns up and you open the scroll and it just says you up
You up, but in Bengali.
in Bengali. That's right. But yes, when Troy Loco's clients would come over, she and Hari would mix certain intoxicants in their drinks. Which intoxicant, you ask? Cigar ash.
God, this sounds like, I don't know, like a punishment for playing
Right?
that King's Cup game.
Yes, I was thinking of that exactly. It's a thing where like whatever, you play some drinking game and there's this disgusting concoction where they put like
Yes.
everything is in there. Which alcohol? Yes. Every alcohol. And the worst part is you can like, there is every kind of alcohol in there, and yet somehow you can only taste and smell that goddamn Old Monk. It just,
Oh God.
as you lose the game and you have to drink that punishment drink, the whiff of Old Monk hits you and you can feel the bile pile up in the back of your throat. Anyway,
Gross.
Troy Loco's clients who would drink this would get really, really hella high. And usually they would pass out. So she would rob them, because now they're asleep. She would sometimes drive them out to their homes and just leave them there. Other times she would just leave them out on the street, okay? She'd just leave them there. And the police would lock them up for public intoxication.
Oh no.
And yeah, this con worked really well for a while because who would these clients complain to? Because complaining to the police would mean that you are now like a upper caste person who is seeing sex workers.
Yes.
Nobody would want to really talk about that. So she got away with this very, very easily. But the fact remains that word of mouth can really impact your business overall. And there were only so many clients that she could rob before she just ran out of clients. So
Fair.
yeah, and Troy Loco was not stupid. Okay, she's quite a smart cookie because obviously she came up with these plans, but she wasn't smart enough to realize that her clients would just tell each other. And they'd all just meet in a club and they'll be like, yeah, bro, Troy Loco just like stole everything from me. And
Maybe they had a WhatsApp group.
ooh. No, get on Signal. WhatsApp is not worth it.
Yes.
Yes. So yeah, it came to a point where she had no clients left and it was time for a new con.
All right. So con number 2 was robbing a different kind of client. So as we mentioned earlier, the Bengali Hindu caste system often saw people marrying within their own castes, right? So one particular Brahmin sect was called the Strotia Brahmins. And in this community, the groom's family paid like a gift. I'm not dowry, but like a sum of money to the bride's family before the wedding. Usually it's the other way around. So in this case, a bride's father could just ask for whatever he wanted. And Troy Loco and Kali Babu were like, hey, scam time. So they capitalized on this. They hired teenage female sex workers and pretended that they were the bride's family. They also rented out a mansion outside of the city to add to the con of pretending to be rich upper caste Hindus. And Kali Babu would search for wealthy grooms in the surrounding villages. The groom would be selected. They would discuss all the wedding plans and then specifically this bridal gift that has to come. And then they would plan like this lavish wedding and like they would throw this lavish wedding.
Course.
There would be no real suspicion because the sex workers that they hired for this, they are able to play the role of the wife, both as the mistress of the house and, in the bed.
Gasp. Actually, why am I gasping?
Yes. Hey, yeah, she's a wife. It's okay.
She's a wife. It's fine.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was about to say escandalo, like, but it didn't fit because it's fine.
So yeah, a month or so after the wedding, the bride would like usually say, I want to go home and meet my family in Calcutta. And in that community, the brides would like deck themselves out in their wedding jewelry when they visit their parents. And the husbands also will go with them. It's all really sweet, except for the fact that this is a scam. So on the way, like Troy Loco and the group would just like abandon the groom and run off. And like Troy Loco would pay off the sex worker / actress and any other expenses that were there. And she and Kali Babu would just pocket the rest of the money. The groom and his family would never find them because they're very unfamiliar with the streets of Calcutta. Also, the city had a population of like 1 million at this point. So where are you going to go hunting?
Fair. It wasn't even a particularly planned city at that time. It was just like,
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Some parts of it were planned where the Brits were there, but the rest of it, obviously, they didn't care. So, yeah, but this con also got very old for 2 reasons. One, word of mouth. It's that same WhatsApp signal group. And the second was the ravages of time. These teenage sex workers got old.
Oh, yeah, fair. That makes sense.
But it's important to remember, and this is something that Dr. Neoge also kind of reminded us, is that Troy Loco was groomed to be a sex worker. Those were all the skills that she had, just her beauty and her charm. And she kind of married these skills so well, like against the backdrop of like a cutthroat society that would have otherwise just, asked her to die if she hadn't found a way to support herself. So, in fact, she would have likely died before, like way before she was transported to Calcutta at the funeral pyre of her husband. So I'm not really mad that she was like, aha, loophole in this like patriarchal system, and she used it to her advantage.
That's fair. I mean, also you said aha loophole. I love that. Aha loophole. But you're right. I'm not mad at that part of it. I totally understand where that's coming from. In many ways, I also feel that it's not as kind of victimless crime-ish. I realize, like, I say this a lot, okay? I say, oh, something is a victimless crime, and I really sound like an anarchist. Just like, that's not me, though. I really like order.
There is, yeah, that's true. There are victims, but I don't know. I guess she was just kind of pushed to this place, right?
Fair.
It's either death or cons.
Yeah,
So,
I get it. I mean, she did the best with what she could do.
Yeah.
But I am a little mad at what comes after this because her later crimes are kind of, I mean, I thought they were particularly disgusting. And they felt really personal to me. It wasn't really just like strangers that she was picking out and doing this to. So by 1875, Troy Loco and Kali Babu started abducting teenage girls in the streets of Calcutta. And they would either sell them off to brothels or they would just sell them to other families as brides. She did this for almost like a year, essentially. This got the attention of the police because this is a very different sort of a crime. It's just literally kids being picked up off the streets and being sold, right? Until that point, she was just a con woman, like looting rich people for like funsies or whatever. Now she's a legit criminal and she's come under the radar of the Calcutta police. All this attention, I mean, Troy Loco was not stupid. She did lay low for a while. But this really fundamentally changed how she was looking at supporting herself. It kind of just moved to a whole different space and it got really dark from this point.
I feel really bad that this is the con that she tried to pull off because like this is how she got into the business in the first place, right? She was sold as a child. So why is she just doing this to others?
That's true. It's a special space in hell.
Yeah.
You know, for women who do this to other women, especially. I think Tina Fey said that or no. Taylor Swift said that about Tina Fey or something. There was some, Taylor Swift and Tina Fey had like they had beef for a while. I don't know. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just sad that she continued the cycle of abuse. Anyway, on that note, I think it's a good time to take a small break. When we come back, murders.
Welcome back. Let's talk about who Troy Loco killed. That's it. No segue, no transition, no cute banter. Let's get into it. We're going to talk about the murder stuff. So, in 1877, Troy Loco and Kali Babu decided, yeah, fine, let's do it. This is the only line we haven't crossed.
Yeah.
Let's go for it. So their first attempt, this is largely orchestrated by Troy Loco, but Kali Babu did all the dirty work. Their first attempt, actually, I think their only attempt with Kali Babu at this point, was on a man who wanted to purchase some jewelry. So Kali Babu pretended to be a jewelry retailer. So he told this rich man from somewhere in the north, UP or Bihar, that he could get some jewelry that this man was looking for. And then Kali Babu promised the owner of a jewelry store to, as in once he got the jewelry from the store, his client, this rich dude from UP or whatever, would pay for the jewelry. So the store owner was like, okay, I believe you. And he sent the jeweler, the jewels with a shop assistant. And when the shop assistant got there, Kali Babu was like, okay, now I'm going to kill you and I will take all the jewels. So that's what he did. Kali Babu murdered him and he buried his body somewhere. And Kali Babu picked up the jewels, gave it to the guy. Whatever money that dude gave, he pocketed it. And this was really, really smart because if they had just taken the jewelry and tried to sell it, the police would have immediately known about it. Do you not expect the store owner to be like, bro, I'm filing a complaint because my jewelry is missing? And then he would describe the jewelry. And then if somebody sold it, they would find it, right? And that establishes a chain. Instead, what Kali Baba did was he sold it off to some other person and just kept the money. So that was really smart.
Yeah.
But the police did find out about this and they sort of traced the body of the assistant and it was found buried under a house.
Oh.
And who did this case go to? It's our detective boy from earlier, Priyanath Mukhopadhyay. Yay. So, as I'm not sure if you guys remember, but Priyanath was the guy who wrote the publication which talked about Troy Loco, our only source, as you mentioned earlier. So, Kali Babu was arrested for this crime. They found him. They did their work. They arrested him. And then he was eventually hanged. That's where Kali Babu's story sort of ends. And now it's just Troy Loco all by herself. She did get away. Even though she orchestrated this whole plan, there was no actual evidence to tie her to the crime. There were no witnesses that actually saw her. It was just Kali Babu doing everything. So she walked. But Priyanath was like, this is one suspicious woman. So he kept an eye on her from that point onwards. And we also understand when we spoke with Dr. Niyogi, there is a chance that this whole story was fictionalized by Priyanath.
Oh.
There is some evidence to suggest that Priyanath did not actually investigate this case, but he sort of read the files later and decided he wants to write about it. Again, there's not something we can verify. It's probably information that Dr. Niyogi got from like private collections and stuff. None of this is publicly available information. A lot of this is in private collections, so we'll never actually have access to it.
And I feel like these guys, Priyanath and Troy Loco, kind of lock horns at different points of her life, right?
They do. It's a lot like, have you watched Catch Me If You Can? It's the Leonardo DiCaprio.
I have not.
Okay. Nisha has this terrible... She hasn't seen anything of any artistic or historical value, movies-wise.
Yes.
At least. But fine. It's a lot like Catch Me If You Can, except it's a little sad because she kills people while Leonardo DiCaprio just forges some checks. So I guess... Anyway, this comparison really broke apart very quickly once you said, no, I haven't seen Catch Me If You Can.
I haven't seen a lot of movies. As you keep referencing them, I'm sure you'll find out.
No, I already know. It's something I just fundamentally cannot stand about you, but whatever. Otherwise, it's a very fulfilling relationship, so it's fine. So Troy Loco, at this point, started murdering all by herself. So her modus operandi, so to speak, is actually very similar to what Cyanide Malika used to do.
Oh.
So she arranged to meet. I mean, it's a little different in the sense that she knew these people, though. Troy Loco would arrange to meet with her former sex worker colleagues from Sonagachi. Many of these women, like her, they were aging and they were very worried about their finances. So she told them that she knew some holy man who could help them with their financial troubles. And she's also encouraged them to like just wear all their jewelry and come when meeting him. And basically she said that he would help double their jewelry if they turned up. So the address to meet up was not suspicious at all. It was a dilapidated old house in this area called Maniktala. It's basically this little suburb a little outside Calcutta. Ideally, you would go look at this house and you'd be like, that is the house from the movie It. There is a clown that haunts that house for sure. I'm not going in there. But I guess this was common for that side of town at the time.
I have not seen it.
Have you not seen? Oh, God. I'm just so going to stop referencing movies at this point. This is just stressful for me. In any case, once these women reached the house, she would, as in Troy Loco, would tell these women to take their clothes off and bathe in the pond before meeting this holy man. Of course, they also took off their jewelry. And once they went into the water, Troy Loco would approach them from behind and she would strangle or drown them. Yeah. And then she would pick up the jewelry and just...
Oh my God, that sounds brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, this sort of really throws some light on the fact that sex workers in general just have no real like social security or support. The people who apparently do normal, in quotes, normal jobs are likely to have insurance and pensions and, savings, those sorts of things, like, just access to medical care, even something as simple as that. But sex workers don't get that, and that's really what pushed like not just her former colleagues to meet her, but that really is what pushed Troy Loco as well.
True.
They're never recognized as people with real jobs, it's not, they don't look at them as people deserving of any sort of support through the state, through welfare, like nothing. So that's why we end up with these sort of situations, because we don't recognize them as people worthy of any sort of protection at this point.
It's sad. I think we should this is just my personal opinion, but it would be great if we just legalize it.
Yeah.
right? Like give them pension, give them, let it be safe, let it be like tax them, let them pay for the economy.
Exactly. As in, so there is an act that in India, as in a legislation that sort of puts sex work in not really in the illegal space specifically. So it's called the Immoral Traffic Suppression Act. It basically allows sex workers to practice their trade privately, but they cannot publicly solicit customers. And for which, if they do, of course, they'll get thrown in jail. And what this really throws light on is the fact that it's just as simple as any employment agreement with or
Yeah.
any freelancer. You can do this privately. The only
Oh.
difference being, like
Yes.
a freelancer, okay, he's doing this in his house. If he wants to go commercial, he needs to get a license or like a shops and establishments registration or something of that sort. But no sex worker can do that because they just can't. And more importantly, you're right. Tax money, buddy. Like,
Yeah, man. Just legalize it, put GST registration, get that money, build roads.
yeah, you don't have to even get a registration if you earn less than 20 lakhs. Congratulations. And I don't know, I just feel at this point it's really come to a point where it's not something we can avoid. There are huge districts in India that cater to this. Sonagachi, of course.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting the one, Kamatipura in Bombay. These are massive spaces with
Right.
thousands of sex workers. And we're ignoring the fact that there are other smaller spaces that exist as well. And all of these women live in likely constant fear
Yeah.
because they don't have clientele that they believe will keep them safe. Or, just I'm sure their brothels don't give them any sort of benefits. So it's just genuinely sad that we haven't just recognized them already.
Anyway, so back to Troy Loco. Now, you may wonder, how long did she keep killing sex workers like this? 3 years. She is known to have killed at least 5 women. Now, it's not clear where she left the bodies of these women. I doubt they were just like floating about in that pond. She must have taken care of it. But in August in 1884, she was caught red-handed by a passerby who saw her attempting to drown a woman. The passerby and the victim took her to the local police, and apparently Troy Loco charmed the constable at the local police station into letting her go.
Yeah, girl still got it.
Yeah, and the complainants were like so pissed off, so they took the case to Priyanath.
What?
And
Okay, fine.
Yeah. And Priyanath was like just waiting to get something to nab her, and he investigated the case, found her guilty, had her arrested, and he sent her to jail to await trial. But something very weird happened. The constable who let her go earlier, he was suspended from service because he was doing like a terrible job of being a police officer. And then he realized, like a light bulb went in his head, and he was like, hey, if Troy Loco was found guilty, I will be expelled from the police for good. So to save his job, the constable paid for Troy Loco's defense lawyers, and he seemed to have paid for like really good lawyers because Troy Loco walked free.
And you know what? She's had a lot of luck so far. This would be a great time for Troy Loco to just lie low or move to another city. Just, start a new life. She did move, but to just a cheaper side of town in Calcutta itself, this area called Chitpur. And Madam did not lay low. Yes, of course, she had to move because, she was running out of money. The other issue was that this court case apparently brought a lot of unwanted publicity to her. And remember, she is still a sex worker. So she would generally be afraid of violence or police brutality because that is just the case today or back in the 1800s. That is just the case, right? And this case was apparently so sensationalized that people were able to recognize her on the streets. And it just became really, I'm sure it became very stressful for her to have to deal with this on a daily basis. So she went to Chitpur. But in Chitpur too, she ran out of money. And at this point, she was really desperate to get her hands on something for sustenance that she murdered Raja Kumari, who was a fellow sex worker who lived in the same building in Chitpur. Raja Kumari apparently owned a lot of jewelry that was given by her clients. And it is said that Troy Loco only wanted to drug her initially and just take the jewelry and go. But Raja Kumari was just like a really tough cookie. So she wasn't able to knock her out. And instead, she got to a point where she was like, whatever, I'll just strangle her. So that's what she did. She strangled her and she took her jewelry.
And of course, who should be called to investigate this case? It was Inspector Priyona.
What?
He's the only officer in the entire city.
It's like Commissioner Gordon. She's the only one. No other police. It's only him.
Exactly. So anyway, Priyona turned up at the crime scene where he asked all the other occupants and someone mentioned Troy Loco. And he was just like, aha, it must be that woman. But I'm guessing he said it in like Bengali or something. So it was probably like, aha, oi mohilatai hobe.
Well done.
Sorry to all native Bengali speakers if I'm not saying it right. But yeah, anyway, now he was sure that, it has to be this one. And he decided to make Troy Loco confess. So Priyana put together like an elaborate plan to get her confession. He arrested her adopted son, Hari, for this murder. And when Troy Loco saw that it was her beloved son in chains, she broke down and she confessed. She apparently surrendered the jewelry that she stole. She was able to point out to a compartment behind her, a cupboard at home, and in which the police also found like some other truly incriminating evidence.
And now you might be asking, did she get her day in court? I mean, yeah, she did because she literally confessed. Of course, she got her day in court. That's not to say she didn't regret the confession, because once she found out that Priyanath had tricked her into admitting this, she tried to recant the confession. By the way, this sort of nonsense would not be permitted in today's world. To arrest someone without any cause or evidence or just a damn warrant, none of that stuff would be allowed. And in fact, if it can be proved that Troy Loco's confession was provided under coercion or duress of some sort, in many circumstances, that won't even be permitted evidence in court. So she would just walk free. You cannot torture an accused and get information out of them, or even like manipulate them in that way, you know? So there are some, so there are some, at least under current Indian laws, the accused have certain rights. So,
right.
I mean, it wasn't a situation where this applied to her, apparently. So after she was arrested, things sort of escalated very, very quickly. I think a lot of this happened within the year. So the lower courts found her guilty of the murder of Raja Kumari because of the overwhelming evidence. And she confessed, of course. The case was also appealed all the way to the High Court of Calcutta, which upheld the conviction. And this was a time when unprovoked murder would result in the death penalty. And she got the death penalty. So she tried getting out of it. She sent mercy petition to the Lieutenant Governor of Bengal, but they said, nope, nothing happening. And, there are some accounts that say that Priyanath regretted his role in her sentencing. One publication that we had read said that he visited her on the night before the hanging. But that just seems like, why? That just seems so dramatic for the sake of it, you know?
Yeah.
There's also speculation that at that meeting, her last words to Priyanath were, and I quote, "I am leaving Hari behind. Please look after him so he does not get into trouble."
Hey.
Yeah, this seems a bit much, right? It seems almost fictionalized.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody gets that.
To make it seem dramatic and cool.
Yeah, you don't get this kind of closure in real life. It's just impossible. It just doesn't make any sense.
True.
Oh, please look after my son or whatever. And eventually, by the end of 1884, Troy Loco was finally hanged. And that is where that story of hers ends.
Or maybe not. Because we... Yes. No. We understood from Dr. Nayogi and some research ourselves that since Troy Loco was a sex worker, she would have had to register herself as one under the Communicative Diseases Act. It was mandatory for sex workers at the time to get checked every week. They were unfortunately often forcibly stripped and checked for diseases and by male doctors.
Ouch.
But this would mean her registration would have included an address. And if that's the case and these records are ever found, then we would be able to track down every place that she stayed. Maybe in a way, we would be able to understand more about her origins and maybe even track her career.
That would be really, really cool. Yeah, just to see where all she was. And this stuff is just really fun for me to have to a lot of it is extrapolation. You're just hoping to God you're correct.
Sure.
But then when these pieces all add up together, you're just ee. It's just really nice.
Yes, true.
Yeah, and you know what? This is quite a ride. This is quite a journey that you took with us. And I think you all deserve a little musical recap at the end of this for sitting through this. You deserve this. So, Nisha, would you like to proceed?
We caught the murdering lover, found the victim's body buried under. Ami Jani, moi moi latai hobe. She drowned her friends for gold, but she walked away so bold. Ami Jani, moi moi latai hobe. Once more she killed her friend, and this is where it will end. Ami Jani, moi moi latai hobe. We tricked her to confess that I just make a mess. Kintu Ami Jani, moi moi latai hobe.
That was amazing. And
Yay.
And one more thing that was really amazing as I thought about it as we were doing this, and as you were singing actually, is that this entire episode of Calcutta, about Calcutta, we got through it without making one Devdas reference.
Hey, that's awesome.
I'm very proud of us because really a lot of what I know about Calcutta is pretty much entirely from the set of Sanjay Leela Bhansali's Devdas. So,
Yeah. I'm very happy. I'm going to go celebrate by inviting my ex-lover's new friends with benefits and dancing with them.
what? That's so specific. That's amazing. But
Hey, that's my Devdas reference.
I got it. Oh no. Failed. It's over. Fine. In any case, thanks so much, guys, for sitting through this episode. It was quite a long one, but I'm hoping it was really educational and fun. Thank you for joining us, of course. And you know us, you know where to find us. Our social media handles, etc., is all available. And of course, you can look up the sources for all of this on our Substack, which we will also provide the link to.
Please go and follow us on Instagram. I am at just.nishfulthinking, just.nishful.thinking. And Raghavi, you can find her at @ragi.those.
You can find me
And
there.
we will see you again on the next episode of Misconduct.
See you guys.